The room was silent, save for the occasional chirp of crickets outside and the soft rustle of fabric as Kyung-hoon shifted in bed for what felt like the 100th time. He lay rigidly on the edge of the futon, back stiff, jaw tight. Ji-yoon was next to him, barely inches away, breathing evenly, eyes closed. His robes had slipped slightly in sleep, exposing a graceful line of collarbone, the soft curve of his neck, and a glimpse of skin that made Kyung-hoon's pulse thunder against his chest. Kyung-hoon turned away quickly, shutting his eyes tightly. "Don't look. Don't think. Don't touch." He tried focusing on the sounds outside, on the steady rhythm of Ji-yeon's breath, on anything but the desire curling hot in his belly. But it was no use. He turned over again, now on his back, then his side. He clenched the covers. Then he shoved them off. Nothing worked. Kyung-hoon groaned silently and sat up, running a frustrated hand through his hair. He stole one last glance at Ji-yeon, who still seemed peacefully asleep, cheeks slightly flushed, lashes dark against his skin. So close. Too close. He couldn't take it anymore. Carefully, quietly, he stood and padded to the door, the wood creaking softly under his foot. As he slipped outside into the cool night, he sighed deeply, part relief, part agony. Back inside, Ji-yeon's eyes slowly fluttered open. He turned slightly, eyes tracing the path Kyung-hoon had just taken out of the room. The smallest of smiles curled on his lips. He had felt the tension radiating off Kyung-hoon all night, the way he stiffened, the way his breath hitched every time their skin accidentally brushed. Ji-yeon had feigned sleep, curious, almost amused, at how disciplined the crown prince was trying to be. And now, watching the moonlight spill into the empty room, Ji-yeon whispered to himself, so noble, so restrained. He turned on his back, and smiled to himself, closing his eyes. The night was cool, the sky dusted with stars that flickered like dying embers. The courtyard was quiet, save for the soft clink of ceramic against stone as Jun-ho tipped back another cup of rice wine, his fourth, or was it fifth? He'd lost count. The bottle swayed in his grip as he poured again, barely noticing the approaching footsteps behind him. Kyung-hoon stood a few feet away, arms folded. He looked at Jun-ho for a long moment, expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he walked over and sat down beside him on the stone bench. Jun-ho blinked, surprised. What the hell? He squinted through his slightly hazy vision. Kyung-hoon reached for the bottle and poured himself a drink without flinching. "You're not hallucinating," he said calmly. "I just want to drink." Jun-ho snorted. "With me? You know I'm your enemy, right?" Kyung-hoon took a sip, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Right now, you're just a man drinking alone. That's lonelier than being my rival." Jun-ho stared at him, stunned into silence. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The two men just sat there, passing the bottle back and forth under the starlit sky. The tension was still there, coiled and quiet like a snake in the grass, but something about the shared silence made it bearable. Eventually, Jun-ho broke it. His voice was quieter this time, more sober than before. "Why him?" he asked, staring into his cup. "Why did you fall for Ji-yeon, even after you knew I was a boy? 10, maybe 11. Living temporarily at an inn attending lectures. While my tutors drilled books and rules into my head all day. I wasn't allowed to go outside, not even for a walk. One night, I snuck out. Just wandered aimlessly into the streets. It was the first taste of freedom I'd ever had, and that's when I met him." "You met Ji-yeon back then?" Jun-ho asked, eyebrows raised. "Yes," Kyung-hoon said with a slight smile. "He too had run away from home. He was full of life, full of mischief. When I was with him, it was the first time I felt normal. Human. Not a prince." He paused, eyes distant. "But we parted ways after that. Still, over the years, he kept showing up in my mind, like a memory refusing to fade. Then one night, I helped stage a raid on the masked trader, and the moment I pulled the mask off, there he was. Ji-yun. I thought it was fate, Kyung-hoon admitted. At first, I was just curious. Then I realized I wasn't curious at all. I was drawn to him, who he is. And when I found out he was disguised as a woman to compete as my bride, I was angry, confused. But I told myself not to ask why. Because deep down, I was terrified that knowing the truth would shatter everything. He finally turned to Junho. But it didn't matter. I knew one thing for sure, I loved him. I think. I always have. Junho gave a low chuckle, almost in disbelief. You sound like someone out of a romance novel. They sat in silence again, the weight of Kyung-hoon's confession lingering in the air. The cicadas buzzed softly in the distance. Then Kyung-hoon asked, "And you? How long have you been in love with him?" The question struck deeper than Junho expected. He stared into the night sky, his voice low and rough from too much wine and regret. "I always knew," he murmured. Kyung-hoon turned his head, curious. "About Ji-yun," Junho added. "His feelings. His love." Kyung-hoon stayed quiet, letting him speak. "I knew," Junho continued, "and I ignored it. I pretended not to see the way he looked at me, the way he waited for me to say something, to give him even a sliver of hope." He exhaled, the breath trembling slightly. "But I was scared. Loving a man, back then, it felt impossible. Wrong. I thought, if I went far away, studied hard, built a future elsewhere, maybe I could erase whatever it was I felt. Or at least forget him." He gave a bitter laugh. "But when I came back, and saw him again, grown, radiant, still looking at me the same way, it hit me. I hadn't forgotten anything. I'd just been running. And now, I regret it. Every second of pushing him away." Kyung-hoon listened quietly. Then, with a small, almost teasing smile, he raised an eyebrow. "Well then, thank you." Junho blinked. "What?" "For rejecting him," Kyung-hoon said with a casual shrug. "If you hadn't, I wouldn't have Ji-yun by my side now." Junho scoffed, but there was no real bite in it. "Don't get comfortable, Crown Prince. I'm still your rival. And I'm not above using dirty tricks to win him back." Kyung-hoon's smile faded slightly as he looked at Junho. "You can try." With that, he stood, brushing the dust off his robe. Junho didn't stop him, only watched as he walked away, his figure growing smaller under the moonlight. But Kyung-hoon's steps slowed just a little once he was alone again. Junho's words echoed in his mind. "I'm not above using dirty tricks." He clenched his jaw. It shouldn't have bothered him, but it did. He made his way back to the room, quietly sliding the door open. The warm scent of herbs and candle wax lingered in the air. Ji-yun lay there, his back turned, breathing slow and steady. Kyung-hoon sighed. His body was heavy with wine and sleep. He slipped under the covers beside Ji-yun, too tired to think, too drunk to stay alert. Sleep pulled at him immediately, and within moments, he was out. Behind him, Ji-yun slowly opened his eyes, the corners crinkling with a quiet smile. He had been awake the entire time. Carefully, he reached out, wrapping his arms around Kyung-hoon from behind. His forehead rested gently against Kyung-hoon's back, and he closed his eyes again. He didn't say a word. But for that moment, he allowed himself to stay close. Just for a little while longer. The sun had barely risen, casting a golden haze over the mountains, when Junho stood at the edge of the courtyard, arms crossed, watching from a distance. Kyung-hoon and Ji-yun were getting ready to leave. There was something easy about the way they moved around each other. Laughing. Brushing fingers. Whispering like there was no one else in the world. Junho's jaw tightened. "They look happy," Min Suk said gently from beside him. He'd been standing there a while. Jun-ho didn't respond, his eyes still locked on Ji-yun's face. It was the smile that got him, the one that reached Ji-yun's eyes. The one he never used to show anyone but him. Min Suk sighed. "You're really going to follow them? I need to see it for myself." "You already see it," Min Suk replied. "You just don't want to believe it. Watching them like this, you're only going to hurt yourself." Jun-ho clenched his fists. "I'm still going, that there's nothing you can do to stop me." Min Suk gave him a look filled with quiet pity, then stepped aside. "Then do what you must. But don't say I didn't warn you." As Kyung-hoon and Ji-yun said their goodbyes and left hand in hand, Jun-ho followed from a distance, his steps light but his heart unbearably heavy. They strolled down the village path, Kyung-hoon occasionally leaning down to whisper something into Ji-yun's ear that made him laugh so hard he had to stop walking. Jun-ho's throat tightened. Ji-yun was glowing, light in his eyes, warmth in his smile. There was no trace of the guarded boy Jun-ho once knew. He looked free. Their first stop was the bustling market. Together, they tried every snack that caught their eye: sweet rice cakes, roasted chestnuts, crispy skewers of grilled meat. Ji-yun licked honey off his fingers and burst into laughter when Kyung-hoon jokingly offered to help him clean it with his own mouth. Jun-ho gritted his teeth behind a stall, trying to convince himself it meant nothing. But it wasn't just the touches or the laughter, it was Ji-yun looked at him. Like he saw Kyung-hoon. Like he really saw him. Later, the couple stopped at a portrait artist's stall. They sat together all smiles as the artist drew their portrait. After which they looked at the final result with smiles on their faces. Jun-ho watched it all from the shadows, feeling each passing moment press into his chest like a slow, burning weight. Next, they visited a local sculptor's house, taking turns shaping clay into small pots. Ji-yun's hands were a mess of smudged earth, but he laughed like a child when Kyung-hoon smeared a streak of it across his cheek. Then came lunch. The two sat at a small restaurant near the market square, facing each other, Ji-yun occasionally feeding Kyung-hoon with his chopsticks, their heads tilted close. They were deep in their own little world, and Jun-ho sat hidden, nursing a cold tea he hadn't touched. Other couples began to take notice of them. A few women sighed wistfully. "Look at them," one whispered to her husband. "Why don't you ever treat me like that?" Another woman giggled. "They're like something out of a painting. I thought love like that was only in stories." The waiter even stopped to compliment them directly. "You two are such a beautiful couple," she said with a smile, not even aware of the storm brewing just meters away. Jun-ho's stomach twisted. He had come hoping to catch a crack in their bond, a sign that Ji-yun was faking it. That he still had a chance. But what he saw instead was something undeniably real. Ji-yun wasn't just happy with Kyung-hoon. He was in love. And Jun-ho had never felt so far away. The scent of grilled meat and sweet pastries filled the air, laughter echoing around the busy market street. Just as Kyung-hoon and Ji-yun finished their meal, a sudden commotion stirred near the square. A group of brightly dressed dancers emerged with the beat of drums and a chorus of flutes following them. The crowd immediately turned, clapping and cheering as the women began their electrifying routine. Ji-yun's eyes lit up. "They're good," he said, swaying a little in his seat as he watched them twirl and stomp with rhythmic precision. Kyung-hoon leaned back with a lazy grin. "Not bad. Though I still think you dance better." Ji-yun chuckled. "Flattery won't get you another bite of my dumplings." Jun-ho, hidden behind a nearby post, narrowed his eyes as the dancers began to weave through the audience, collecting admiration and coins. But soon, several of them started to drift toward Kyung-hoon, their movements growing more flirtatious. One of them even twirled close and winked, clearly aiming to impress. Kyung-hoon raised a brow, amused but unmoved. Ji-yun, however, didn't say a word. He just turned slowly, resting his chin on his hand and fixing the girls with a cold, razor-sharp stare. The same kind of look that can make grown men nervous. It worked. The dancers faltered. One missed a step. Another muttered something before they all quickly retreated, refocusing their energy on the crowd instead. Kyung-hoon bit back a laugh, his eyes crinkling as he looked at Ji-yoon. "Jealous, were you?" Ji-yoon scoffed. "Hardly. I just don't want to share my food. Or my husband." "Husband, huh?" Kyung-hoon leaned forward. "Sounds nice when you say it." They bickered playfully, tossing jabs back and forth, Ji-yoon teasing about Kyung-hoon's inflated ego, Kyung-hoon pretending to be offended. Their laughter rang through the square like music. Jun-ho clenched his jaw. The sound grated on his nerves. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in soft orange and pink hues, the couple rose from their table. Hand in hand, they strolled down the cobbled streets. Ji-yoon's head occasionally rested on Kyung-hoon's shoulder, Kyung-hoon's thumb gently brushed the back of Ji-yoon's hand. Jun-ho followed them from a distance, heart tight, step slow. They eventually reached a quiet lake just at the edge of the village, where the water shimmered like glass, reflecting the cotton candy sky. Fireflies began to appear, flickering like little stars between the reeds. Kyung-hoon stopped, gazing at the lake for a moment before turning to Ji-yoon. "Are you going to be alright, back in the palace?" His voice was soft, and for once, serious. "It's different now. You're not just pretending anymore. You're the crown princess." Ji-yoon exhaled and nodded. "I'll be fine. I've come this far, haven't I?" Kyung-hoon frowned slightly. "I just wonder, how long before someone finds out the truth?" Ji-yoon turned to him fully, fingers squeezing his hand. "Then let them. Let the world burn if it must. As long as you're with me, that's the only truth I care about." Kyung-hoon stared at him, really stared, like Ji-yoon was the only thing in the universe that made sense. His breath hitched, emotions swirling. And then, without another word, he leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't soft. It wasn't shy. It was intense, passionate, and desperate, like two people trying to imprint the memory of this moment into each other's skin. Ji-yoon clutched at Kyung-hoon's robes, pulling him closer as their lips moved together, bodies pressed close in the fading light. Jun-ho stood frozen behind the trees, rain beginning to patter softly on the leaves above him. He had followed them the entire day, clinging to the faintest hope that perhaps just perhaps Ji-yoon still had a sliver of his heart left for him. But watching them now, locked in a kiss that seemed to defy time and space, he knew that part of his life was over. Ji-yoon was no longer his. He watched a moment longer, the rain thickening into a steady downpour, soaking through his clothes, plastering his hair to his forehead. Ji-yoon and Kyung-hoon didn't even seem to notice the weather, still caught in their little world. Jun-ho scoffed bitterly, blinking the rain from his lashes as he turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy and slow. The drops masked the stinging in his eyes. He didn't want to admit it, but in that moment, he felt defeated. Utterly and completely. Meanwhile, back at the lakeside, Ji-yoon and Kyung-hoon finally broke their kiss, both slightly breathless. Ji-yoon cleared his throat, looking away with a shy laugh. "So, the rain." Kyung-hoon ran a hand through his wet hair, blinking at the droplets. "Didn't even notice." They looked at each other, drenched, clothes clinging, faces flushed. There was a crackling energy between them, like the moment before lightning strikes. "I think we need to find shelter," Ji-yoon said, voice a little breathless. Kyung-hoon nodded quickly. "Agreed. Before we melt." They stumbled into a small lodge on the edge of the village, dripping wet, their laughter echoing in the quiet entryway. An older man behind the front desk looked up from his nap, squinting at them. Well, the man said, rubbing his hands together with an exaggerated grin. "Look what the rain dragged in, newlyweds." Ji-yoon blinked. "And no, we're not. Oh, don't be shy now, the man cut in, already shuffling through keys. I can spot honeymooners a mile away. That dazed look. The rosy cheeks. That's love, or hormones. Either way, I got just the room for you two lovebirds. Kyung-hoon shot Ji-yoon a helpless look. Should we say something? Ji-yoon, cheeks bright red, muttered, just go with it. The old man chuckled and handed them a large, heart-shaped key. Room 4, the blossoming peach suite. Best bed in the place. Soft as a cloud and creaks just the right amount. He winked. Ji-yoon turned completely red. Oh, and don't worry, the man added, leaning in conspiratorially. The walls are very thick. What happens in the peach suite, stays in the peach suite. 10 gold coins please, he added stretching out his palm. Kyung-hoon tried not to laugh as he handed out the money. Ji-yoon buried his face in his wet sleeves. The man stepped aside with a little flourish. Enjoy yourselves, newlyweds. And remember, rainy nights make the best memories. As they climbed the stairs, Ji-yoon groaned under his breath. I swear, if there's rose petals and a mirror on the ceiling. Kyung-hoon chuckled, you'll what? Take it up with the peach suite management. Ji-yoon gave him a side eye but smiled despite himself. The moment Kyung-hoon unlocked the door to the blossoming peach suite, both he and Ji-yoon paused in surprise. The room was stunning. Soft lantern light bathed the space in a golden glow. Silk curtains billowed gently at the windows. A large bed, elegant, carved wood with delicate floral engravings, stood in the center, adorned with crisp linens and peach blossom petals scattered across the sheets. A gentle scent of jasmine lingered in the air. Wow, Ji-yoon breathed, stepping inside slowly. Kyung-hoon closed the door behind them, the sound of rain tapping steadily against the windowpane. Well, the old man wasn't exaggerating, he murmured, voice slightly hoarse. They stood there for a moment, drenched, quiet, flushed. The tension between them was no longer unspoken. It crackled in the air like static. Kyung-hoon reached up and began unfastening the ties of his robe, but before he could finish, Ji-yoon stepped forward and gently took his hands. Let me, Ji-yoon whispered. Kyung-hoon stilled. Ji-yoon's fingers moved slowly, carefully peeling the wet fabric from Kyung-hoon's shoulders, letting it fall to the floor. His gaze was steady, unflinching, filled with something vulnerable and bold at once. Then, without hesitation, Ji-yoon leaned in and kissed him. It was deep and slow, no longer shy or uncertain. They moved to the bed as Kyung-hoon kissed him back passionately. But he paused, pulling back just enough to look him in the eye. Ji-yoon, he said softly, are you sure? Ji-yoon's eyes didn't waver. Yes. I want this. I want you. That's enough, isn't it? Kyung-hoon's heart swelled with something tender and fierce all at once. It is. Outside, the rain fell harder, drumming softly against the roof as they surrendered themselves to each other. Later that night, as thunder rolled faintly in the distance, Jun-ho stumbled back into the house. He was soaked to the bone, clothes clinging to him, hair dripping water onto the floorboards. He looked like a man who had wandered through a storm, not just outside, but within himself. Min-suk looked up from where he sat, eyes calm but heavy. How was it? Jun-ho didn't answer at first, just stood there, dripping. I told you not to go, Min-suk continued, voice quiet. Told you it would only hurt you. That they were already in love. Jun-ho finally moved, collapsing onto a low stool. His voice cracked. I saw it. All of it. Min-suk didn't need to ask what he meant. What do I do now? Jun-ho asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Min-suk hesitated, then said simply, give up. Jun-ho clenched his fists. Just like that? You lost him a long time ago, Min-suk said gently. You just didn't want to see it. Back at the lodge, the rain still whispered against the windows. Kyung-hoon lay on his back, arm draped around Ji-yeon, who rested his head on his chest. The air between them was warm, the silence comfortable. "I'm so happy right now, Kyung-hoon. Today was wonderful." "From beginning till end," Ji-yeon whispered. Kyung-hoon turned slightly, pressing a kiss to Ji-yeon's hair. "I'm glad," he said. Then Ji-yeon lifted his head, eyes clear and open. "I love you, Kyung-hoon," he said without hesitation. "With all my heart." Kyung-hoon closed his eyes, pulling him closer, a small, content smile forming on his lips. The storm outside might have raged on, but in that room, all was still. The morning sunlight streamed gently through the window panes, golden and soft, casting long shadows on the wooden floor of the inn-room. Kyung-hoon sat at the edge of the bed, pulling on his robe in quiet thought, while Ji-yeon, behind him, tried to smooth his hair with slightly trembling fingers. There was a strange but pleasant awkwardness between them, the kind that only comes after something deep and intimate has changed everything. Ji-yeon glanced at Kyung-hoon, then quickly looked away when their eyes met. "We should get going." Kyung-hoon gave a quiet chuckle. "Yeah, before the innkeeper starts making weird jokes." Too late. As they stepped out into the courtyard with their things, the middle-aged innkeeper spotted them and grinned knowingly. "Well, good morning, newlyweds," he chirped with too much enthusiasm. "Did you two have a blossoming night?" Ji-yeon's face turned bright red. I'll wait outside," he stammered, ducking his head and walking off quickly. Kyung-hoon, completely unbothered, just smirked and gave a slow nod. "You know what? I think we'll be coming back here sometime." The innkeeper winked. "The peach blossoming suite will always be ready." Back at the temple, Haru was lounging near the garden, sipping tea when the couple returned. The moment he saw them, he raised a brow. Well, Haru said, eyeing them playfully. "And where exactly did you two disappear to since yesterday?" Ji-yeon blinked, flustered, but Kyung-hoon just shrugged casually. "We needed alone time." From the side, Jun-ho gave a cool glance, said nothing, and turned away. Min-suk sighed, stepping in before it got awkward. "We should head for the palace. It's a long journey." Everyone began packing up. Haru prepared a horse-drawn carriage for Ji-yeon and Kyung-hoon and 2 fine horses for Jun-ho and Min-suk. As they stood by the temple gates, ready to part ways, Haru placed a gentle hand on Ji-yeon's shoulder. "Take care of yourself, my child." Ji-yeon smiled softly. "Thank you for everything." With waves and final bows, the group set off. The road was long, flanked by tall trees and rolling hills. Birds chirped in the background, and the wind carried the scent of pine. Inside the carriage, Ji-yeon leaned against the window, sighing contentedly. "This is peaceful, but I'm still so tired." Kyung-hoon gave him a mischievous look. "Tired? I wonder why. Last night must have been something." Ji-yeon flushed. "Stop it," he muttered, gently hitting Kyung-hoon's arm, though he couldn't help the shy smile tugging at his lips. Kyung-hoon chuckled and pulled him close. "Sleep then. I'll keep watch." Ji-yeon didn't protest. Nestled in Kyung-hoon's arms, his eyes slowly fluttered shut. His breathing evened out, soft and relaxed. Some time passed before the carriage gave a sudden jolt. Ji-yeon stirred awake, confused. "What?" Kyung-hoon was looking out of the window, his expression darkening. "Something's not right." He placed a hand on Ji-yeon's shoulder. "Stay inside. I'll check." Ji-yeon nodded, but unease crept in as Kyung-hoon stepped out of the carriage. Moments passed. There was no sound, no voices, no movement, not even the rustling of leaves. Ji-yeon's instincts flared. Ignoring Kyung-hoon's warning, he climbed out of the carriage, and immediately froze. They were surrounded. Dozens of armed men stood on all sides, emerging from the woods like shadows, their faces obscured and their weapons drawn. Ji-yeon's breath hitched. Kyung-hoon. Kyung-hoon was already standing ahead of him, tense and alert, his hand inching toward his sword. "Stay behind me." The peaceful journey had turned into a sudden trap, and danger now loomed large on the quiet road. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit study room within the luxurious home of Minister Jin Suk, the scent of burning incense curled in the air. Maps were spread out across a polished wooden table, red markings drawn over key locations. Mrs. Jean sat on a chair beside her brother, her fingers nervously tapping against the table. Only 3 days left before the official ceremony. What if Kyung-hoon returns before then? What if Ji-yeon is with him, she asked. Minister Jin Suk didn't even glance up from the map. He won't. She narrowed her eyes. You sound sure. I've arranged a welcome party for them at the border, he replied with a cruel twist of his lips. A dozen blades in the shadows. They'll be received like royalty, only difference is, they'll return to the palace as corpses. Mrs. Jean let out a quiet laugh, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Then Tae-jin will be made crown prince, Min Seo will marry him and your plan will finally come to pass. Back in the forest path bordering the capital, the air had turned heavy. Ji-yeon stood frozen, his heartbeat roaring in his ears. All around them, more masked armed men emerged from the trees, silent and deadly. Their black clothes melted into the shadows, but the glint of their swords caught the light. Min Suk drew his own weapon from his back. We're surrounded. They planned this. Jun-ho, already off his horse, cursed under his breath. What on earth is going on? The leader of the masked men stepped forward, lifting a hand. The others prepared their attack. And in that quiet, deadly moment, for against dozens, blades gleaming and hearts racing, time seemed to hold its breath. Their lives hung in the balance. Thanks for watching. Do like and subscribe to the channel for more episodes.